In the interview you're about to see, you're going to meet a fantastic guy by the name of Jim Livingston, who has an amazing story to tell. Jim is retired from the Army and has had serious heart issues for years. And then a while back, on top of his heart problems, he developed diabetes. In short, he was a mess and he felt terrible. But this story has a happy ending. Jim found a way out, and he's one of the many people I hear from whose A1C score has gone from seriously diabetic to non-diabetic in a few short months. Stay tuned. Before we get to the video, I have an announcement. My publisher, Harvest House, has offered my first two books, Overcoming Runaway Blood Sugar and 60 Ways to Lower Your Blood Sugar, at a huge discount when you buy them electronically. Normally you can download these books for $9 or $10 US, but throughout the month of March 2019, they may be purchased for about $2 each. So if you're in a position to download ebooks to your computer, phone, or tablet, here's a great chance to get my books for very little money. The links to where you can get these books, including on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, and Google Play, are in the description notes below. Well, we are blessed to have with us a man by the name of Jim Livingston, and I just never get tired of hearing wonderful reports of people that have found answers to their health issues, and particularly blood sugar issues, since that's been a concern of mine. And actually, well, let me first welcome Jim. Jim, so thankful to you for being willing to share your story.
Well, thank you, Dennis. I really appreciate your YouTube channel. It's been quite the blessing to me.
Good deal. Well, Jim is a retired soldier, retired from the Army for how many years did you say it was?
Just shy of 25 years.
Just shy of 25. So you didn't just do your 20-year limit and get out immediately.
No, sir. I would have stayed longer, but my health problems are kind of what sent me out the door.
Okay. Well, we appreciate your service to our country for sure. And Jim, apparently somewhere you found my channel, and then you made a comment or two, and it intrigued me, and I had to get in touch with you. How long have you been following the Beat Diabetes channel?
I've been following it probably about 10 months. I follow a lot of channels on YouTube, but there was just something about the clarity and simplicity of your message and the way you presented the material. It really appealed to me.
Well, that's neat. That's neat. And a lot of the people that share their story, it's just pure blood sugar issues. Their A1C is at 8 or 9 or 10 or whatever. But in your case, your doctor was more concerned with your heart than he was your blood sugar for a while. Is that right?
That's absolutely right. I didn't even know I had a heart problem. I mean, my father had heart issues and had several heart attacks, and that's eventually what caused his death. But I had been a soldier. I was healthy, I'd running, you know, doing the jumping jacks, push-ups, all the things we do.
Yeah.
And then all the other physical demands. But it was when I was at my retirement physical, they hooked me up to an EKG machine, and all these doctors came running in. And I thought, well, somebody's in trouble. And the next thing I knew, they were all standing around me. And that's when I first discovered I had an issue.
A heart issue?
Yes, a heart issue.
And exactly what was the issue? Was there blockage?
Well, that's what they thought at first, because the EKG was really abnormal. But they determined three things immediately. I had what it was called dilated cardiomyopathy, or my heart muscle was stretching, so it couldn't pump efficiently. And then I had an electrical issue of lower bundle branch blockage, which just means the two sides don't get the electrical charge in sync the way they should. And that created a third issue of atrial fibrillation. So that was it in a nutshell.
Well, it sounds like, I mean, in layman's terms, your heart was in big trouble. You had some, not just little minor issues, but some serious issues.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah. So the doctor's doing his best to help you with that, and at some point, blood sugar becomes a part of the whole issue. When did that happen? How long did it take for that to happen? And was that a big concern when they found out you had high blood sugar?
It wasn't initially, because like I said, the first thing they did was they put me on a series of heart medicines that, one, to prevent your chances of stroke, things like that, to get my heartbeat more regular, and to make sure my blood pressure was where it needed to be. But a lot of these medicines come with their own side effects. And I knew from my dad's experience that diet played a portion in it, but they never even brought that up. So I thought, well, if I'm going to try to fix my heart, I better figure this out. And that's when it took me down the trail of eating low carb, high fat.
Okay, so the doctors were giving you medication, but they never mentioned diet at all. Is that right?
That's correct. Not a bit.
Okay, well, you'd think they might, but... And then the other thing that's interesting in your case is you're having heart problems, and you're doing some research, and you decide to do the low-carb, high-fat diet. Is that right?
Before I got to the low-carb, high-fat, I did do a left turn into like vegetarianism and juicing, and that just had disastrous results. And that's when I think the blood sugar issue really jumped out.
Now, what were those disastrous results? Your blood sugar rose, your A1C rose, or were you having...
Yes, they rose drastically. I had always had borderline, I guess they would say pre-diabetic with my blood sugars. But when I started juicing, because I'm getting all these fruit juices with none of the benefits of fiber to slow it down, it was really spiking my blood sugars.
Were you testing yourself at that time?
No, I wasn't. I was depending on, I would just really not feel well and then go to the doctor, and of course they would test me. And so I wasn't really tracking that kind of mechanism at the time.
So your A1C was going up pretty steadily while you were involved in the vegetarian diet?
Yes, it was.
You apparently did some research. Tell us about that. Is it just your nature, to not be satisfied with what you're told and to research, to read, to think, to study?
Yes, I'm a really data-driven person. I like things in charts and spreadsheets, and I like to see things that I can compare. I mean, I understand the scientific method. I can read these journals. I understand, random control trials. But for me, it came down to in one experiment. I wanted to know what was going on with me, what was causing me to get worse, and what could possibly cause me to get better.
So you ended up somehow becoming convinced that it might be worth a try to do the low-carb, high-fat. Is that right?
That's correct. I was reading some literature, not medical literature, but just nutritionists, lay nutritionists that were having good results with it. And so I started to experiment with it, and I noticed right away that I was feeling better. I was having more energy. I didn't know what was really happening medically at that time, but I was getting enough benefit to know that I was onto something.
Well, you realize you were going directly counter to the conventional wisdom, which is if you increase your fats, all that cholesterol and all that fat is going to just work its way into your veins and arteries, and it's going to harden, and you're going to be in terrible shape heart-wise. And yet here you are with serious heart problems, and you're going high fat. Did the irony of that ever hit you?
Yeah, that was not lost on me at all. But like I said, due to very close family members, my father, my grandmother on my mother's side, watching them go through poor quality life at the end, following all the doctor's advice, and it not seeming to benefit them at all, it just made me really start to question what we're being told.
Yeah, well, I have to say, Jim, my mom went through the same thing. She had diabetes. She followed the doctor's advice. Of course, at that time, I was a lot younger and totally ignorant of any of these things. And she just got worse and worse, had her legs amputated, and eventually died of a heart attack. So sometimes you do have to do some research. How long did it take you, Jim, when you went low carb, high fat, to begin to see some positive results? Are we talking about like a year or two, a few months?
I would say there was dramatic results within 2 to 3 months. I mean, I had some rapid weight loss. I had never had a weight problem until this all started. And then I gained a lot of weight pretty quickly. And when I found low carb, high fat, I dropped about 20 pounds within 2.5 months. I mean, a lot of that's water weight initially. But then it just got to be a steady, slow progression down, and it seemed to me at a kind of healthy pace, nothing too crazy. And of course, as I lost a little bit of weight, my joints felt better. I was able to get out and walk more, and it kind of snowballed. It just, my health seemed to be going in the right direction.
You probably weren't thinking a whole lot about weight loss at the first.
No, absolutely not.
Now, I think you told me in a previous conversation we had that you sort of slid from one diet to another. You went keto, carnivore, low carb. What was the order of those, and why did you keep changing?
Well, I started low carb, and it was without a lot of science to back it up that I had found. It's not to say it wasn't out there. I was just starting my journey. And so I started by, eating fatty meats, love ribeyes, chicken thighs, things like that, and some green leafy vegetables, cooking in olive oil or butter. And that seemed to work out. But part of me with that, in the back of your mind, you've been told so long that fat's bad for you, fat's bad for you. I thought, okay, let's not add anything. Let's just take what God provided in the food. And so if you look at, ribeyes and chicken thighs and the good tasting things, but then you want to lean it up a little bit, because the vegetables are great, but if you're going to cook them, you really got to put them in either olive oil or butter or something. So I said, why don't I just do away with all this mess and just go straight carnivore? And that seemed to do pretty good for a while, but after a while, and I started to learn a little bit more about nutrition and what our body requires, you can't get everything from meat. So I started to add the vegetables back in. And so now I would say I don't really call it low carb, high fat. I just eat the food that God produced the way He produced it.
Yeah, well, we had a wonderful man on before. We did an interview, and that's exactly what he said. He said, I just try to eat what God created and the way He created it. And so your doctors really weren't pushing you to do this. They weren't really saying to do it, but you began to see some results. What did they think when you came back and you had some better numbers and some better blood lipids?
Well, it was kind of funny. My general practitioner that I've seen for probably 12 years now, I've developed a relationship with him. And he noticed you get on the scale, and everybody worries about the scale. That's not really my thing, but he saw the labs were going the right direction, and so he said, "So I guess you're doing low salt, low fat, all these things." I said, "No, not really." And so he didn't want to hear anymore, but he just kind of said, "Well, just keep doing what you're doing."
Uh-huh. Well, you were understating it when you said not really. You might just as easily have said not at all.
Yes.
But yeah, it is funny. But you were getting some results, and your A1C. Let's talk about the A1C. What do you suppose it was, or do you know what it was at your worst, and then how low has it come since you've done that?
I think my highest was 7.8, which doesn't sound that high, but I think, as you've mentioned in a previous video of yours, the one-time occurrence of a test doesn't always give you the true picture of what's going on. Even when it was high, I would say that I would have drastic highs, just the daily and the lows. So my roller coaster rides were very steep.
Yeah, I had the same thing, Jim, and you feel terrible. I mean, it is a horrible feeling, those ups and downs and that roller coaster blood sugar. I don't think there's anything quite so bad. And so you knew in your body something was really wrong, and I imagine after you went the other way and began to see the results, everything stabilized and you felt a whole lot better.
Absolutely, yes. When I could keep the peaks down and the lows really went away. I didn't have the big drops after the high peaks. Once I got it down to when I was testing, and maybe I'd have 120 after a meal. I was starting to get what I would call some blood pressure, blood glucose control. Maybe not as tight as I'd like it, but the range was getting much better.
So how did you come upon the idea of testing yourself, and describe the type of tests you did with your blood sugar?
So I thought, okay, I'm going to get up in the morning, I'm going to test to see what my fasting blood glucose is, and that's usually my highest reading. As of late, like this morning, it was 95. But when I first started this, to have 117, 118, as soon as I got out of bed was normal. And I thought, okay, so I know where I'm at when I get up. And then I would test right before I would have a breakfast meal. Usually I'd have eggs and something with them, eggs and sausage and bacon. And I test it right before. And then I'd test it an hour after. And then I'd test it 2 hours after. So I was poking myself quite a bit, but it's because I wanted to see what was happening throughout the day and not just have, the A1C is great, but that's a 3-month average. And even if you're just testing once or twice a day, you don't really get a true picture of what's happening throughout the day.
So did you have any aha moments where at the beginning of your testing where you said, this makes a lot of sense. I think I'm starting to understand.
Yeah, I think so. Of course, I try to eat some protein heavier meals, and that didn't really do much. And actually, sometimes it would even lower my glucose. But I was experimenting with some of the things like sweet potatoes. You hear that they're a starch, but they're a good starch. And I would try that, and they would shoot way up. I'd get a 168 or something. And I thought, okay, this is definitely the wrong direction. I don't care who says what it does for you. For me, it's definitely a no-go.
Yeah, well, my friend, you are on the exact same page as I am, because the ultimate arbitrator and judge of our health and our blood sugar is that meter. And there's a lot of people with great theories about different foods and all of that, but the blood sugar meter doesn't lie. I mean, it may not be perfectly accurate, but it's going to give us a pretty good idea. So you're testing foods, you're finding some that work, some that don't, and what do you do with that information?
Well, one thing is it really simplified my menu. I have a family, I have a wife and 4 boys. So really, I'll do batch cooking where I'll cook large portions of meat, or my wife would make a big tray of bacon for me and wrap it up into portions. So every morning I knew I'd have a couple of pieces of bacon I could take with me. So it actually simplifies the food preparation, and then I just try to pair that with something. I like collard greens and spinach and broccoli and asparagus, and so on the weekends when I have time, I'll do that. I like to grill, and I've got a smoker that I use. So it actually simplified things, and I don't get bored with it. That's the other thing. Is I don't need all this variety, moderation, a little bit of everything.
You were probably close to an 8 A1C, and your lowest one of recently, what kind of an A1C are you getting?
I just got 5.4. Got the results back a couple of weeks ago.
Now, that's wonderful, Jim, and that's not even officially pre-diabetic. That would just be considered normal. So it's very motivating, isn't it?
It really is. And the meter keeps me honest too. I have coworkers, they see, they know that I do it, and they know that, to them, I have this strange way of eating. They're like, why do you keep testing? You eat the same foods. And I said, well, because I'm not there. I'm still metabolically damaged is the way I see myself, even though I've come a long way. I don't think that I could ever go back to what I was doing to myself before.
Yeah. Well, you really don't want to, at least, I don't, and I think I can speak for a lot of us. But let's talk about your heart. There's a lot of people say, okay, great, you got your blood sugar down, but I'll bet your heart is just, a real mess by now with all that meat and all that fat that you're ingesting. But you're being tested not just for your blood sugar, but the doctors are carefully checking your heart. What are they discovering?
Yes, well, I do have what's called a CRTD, a pacemaker defibrillator installed in me. And I get that read. I have a little device at home that I push the button, it reads, and it sends it to my doctor. And really, they just send me a note saying, yep, your device is still working. It can detect if something's going on with me, but I've not really had any episodes. Another funny story with this, though, is I did have a cardiac event back in 16. I had already started low carb, high fat, had gone and was just starting to test my blood sugars at that point, and was hospitalized, and they did a catheterization on me. All the doctors are standing around me, and they're looking at this. Of course, you're awake for this. And they called all their other colleagues in, and they said, can any of you find anything in this guy's system? And they're like, these are the cleanest pipes we've ever seen, referring to my arteries. So
are you kidding me?
If it was clogging it up, they couldn't find it.
But you wouldn't believe how many people have commented, saying, okay, yeah, you got your blood sugar down, but I'll bet you're really a mess internally with your arteries and so forth. And you're telling me that, you had heart problems, for years, and you start pumping up the fat in your diet and probably eating more meat than you ever have before. And the doctors are calling other doctors in to look at you and saying, we don't see any evidence of any kind of blockage. Am I getting that right?
That's absolutely correct, Dennis.
Wow. Well, that is amazing. And so what are you looking for in the future? You just kind of maintaining the kind of diet and lifestyle? And by the way, are you exercising at all?
Currently, my exercise is walking.
Well, you have seen amazing results in your body, in your health, in your life, and I'm just thrilled for you, Jim. It's a great blessing. I like I said at the beginning, I never get tired of reading some of these stories, and yours just struck me as these are sincere. This is a sincere message from a really nice guy. So I thought I'll ask him if he wants to do an interview, and you said you would, which was made me happy. So thank you for being a part of our program, and you're going to be on one of the upcoming episodes. And so someone who's just found out they had diabetes, they have diabetes, their A1C score is, way out of line. What would you say to them?
Well, I would say, first of all, don't panic. Don't be anxious, because the stress can do as much damage as the sugar can. Look at what God's made to give you, and just be reasonable with it, and learn all you can for programs like yours, Dennis. I gotta say, your message is so clear and so concise. I really appreciate it.
Wasn't that great? It is so exciting to see the bully of diabetes being pummeled once again. In getting his blood glucose from a diabetic to a non-diabetic level, Jim Livingston made a couple of very smart decisions. First, he did his homework. He read, he watched videos, he thought, he analyzed, he considered his options. He did not simply go with the conventional high-carb, low-fat diet that has been preached to us for the last 40 years and which has not worked at all. And second, he tested himself like crazy and allowed his blood sugar meter to guide him in deciding which foods to eat. He did not rely on his friends or on some fad diet or some nutritionist who is trained in the old school philosophy, which insists that all carbs are great but meat will kill you. He relied on his blood sugar meter. This is called eating to the meter. And as a result, his A1C took a nosedive and was soon in the normal range. I know this is simple, but it is highly effective. In fact, radically effective. It is so effective that there's not another approach to controlling blood sugar that even comes close. Let Jim be an inspiration to you. So that's it. Give the video a thumbs up and YouTube will promote it to others. And consider subscribing to our channel and then click that bell icon, which will ensure that you're notified every time we post a new video. God bless and see you again soon.